right, what is up? Elevate and Impact. We are here.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
I am here at my house, and you are there at your house.
Yeah.
But it's week 4 of a deeper dive.
Final week of Journey Through Mark. What is this?
I know, Journey Through Mark. I'm like trying to pep you up, and you're like, "Yep."
I'm sorry.
No,
That's
it's
my.
okay. It's all right. It's all right. That's how we're all feeling in the midst of quarantine. It's hard to muster some energy. What has been your favorite thing about quarantine?
Oh, that's so hard. I gotta say my cats.
Your cats? Okay.
You judge me, but I'm getting a lot of good quality time with my cats, and the relationship building has been fantastic.
That's great. That's great. I always, quarantine or not, I always try to exercise social distancing with cats. I always have a 6-foot rule with
Oh my.
cats.
Well, it's at the point now where they follow me everywhere, and if I shut a door, shut them out of the room, they freak out. So it's a little bit intense right now.
You know what? I wonder if my kids are cats because they do the same thing.
Maybe.
They follow me around. Well, hey, anyway, let's jump in. We are in a week 4 of a deeper dive, and we finished up the book of Mark this week. And I mean, there's to pick one thing to talk about today was okay, well, there's so much that happened, the Last Supper and Jesus' trial and, death and resurrection. And so it was really hard to pick one thing to talk about. But there was one thing that really stood out to me that really kind of challenged me, honestly, the most. And it was in the actual book. It's page 70. But in chapter 14, starting in verse 32, it's right after the Passover. They share the Passover meal, and they go to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray.
Yeah.
And I love this prayer that Jesus prays where he says in verse 36, he says, "Abba, Father," he said, "everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will." Jesus knew what was coming.
Yeah.
He knew that he was going to have to suffer, that he would be put on trial, that he would be mocked and beaten. And even the Son of God is God, Father, take this from me. I don't want to go through this, but not my will and yours be done. And I love that because Jesus is actually praying by himself in this moment. And he goes back to check on some of the disciples who were also supposed to be praying. And he goes back and they had fallen asleep, which happens. That happens to me sometimes too. But he goes back to check on them and they have fallen asleep. And he's I can only imagine the frustration that Jesus is feeling in that moment of really, really, guys, really. And I love what he says when he says, "The spirit is willing, but the body is weak."
Yeah.
And I think so often we say things like, "Oh man, if only our spirit is so willing and so we so want to connect with God more and connect with Jesus more. We want to deepen that relationship, but the body is weak." And so it was a challenge for me, honestly. When I read that, I was kind of man, the number one excuse that I usually have for not connecting with God is time. And in this season, it's pretty much all I got. All I got is time. Got a lot of it. And so, honestly, it was just a huge challenge to me of am I taking advantage of the time that I have? Like I say, I want to grow deeper in my relationship with Jesus, but am I really taking advantage of the time that I have to
Mm.
really do that and to really deepen those roots and strengthen my relationship with God? Because it's easy to look at the situation around us and go, yeah, um,
Mm.
take this cup, God.
Yeah.
Take this away. Like this sucks. Nobody wants what's going on in the world right now.
Mm.
But not my will, yours be done. And I think the
Yeah.
hardest part about that is like just waiting to see like what good comes out of it. And
Absolutely.
so, man, I just took that as a challenge of like, man, as Jesus is praying and he's saying, "Take this cup from me," and then he goes back and sees the disciples sleeping. He's like, that one verse just really stuck out to me. The body is, or the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Like that is so true for me too. So yeah, that's what stuck out to me and just kind of challenged me of like, man, I just, I gotta walk the talk,
Absolutely. And I feel like, the Bible challenges that in so many different ways.
Oh yeah.
Like all the time. I'm like, oh no, I'm not walking that.
Yeah.
Like, I
You gotta walk it like I talk it.
Exactly. And I feel like with this week's reading, there's so much content because it's Holy Week.
Yeah.
And like so much going on, but obviously I'm going to skip over the obvious of Jesus dying on the cross for us.
What? He did?
It's very important. It very much stood out to me, but I'm going to go to something else, which is I want to talk about how in the last chapter of Mark, and it's 16 and it starts in verse 5, and it's talking about when the women show up at the tomb to visit Jesus, to kind of like honor him and honor his burial, and they find that he's not there. And so I'm going to read these verses. It says this. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. "Don't be alarmed," he said. "You are looking for Jesus of the Nazarene, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. But go tell his disciples and Peter, he's going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." Trembling and bewildered, the women went out and fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. And the reason I want to talk about that is because I just think it's like the gravity of that whole situation of like these two women are the first to hear the good news. They're the first to hear that Jesus has risen, that he is alive, and they're the first ones to ever be challenged or like called with the task of sharing that news. Mm-hmm. And they hide and they're scared, and there's a lot of reasons for that, especially like back then in that context, women weren't taken seriously, so there's also a good chance that like them sharing that information could be life-threatening to them, but at the same time, that's some really good information that you might want to share.
Totally.
So what I love about it though is that you do see later on that the women do eventually like come forward and they like do share, but what really stuck out to me then was there was a challenge at the end of the reading in this chapter, and I felt like this challenge just really sat with me because it really resonated with just the way I experience my faith at times, and I think the way a lot of people do, and it's just like, are we scared or are we not scared of sharing our faith and sharing who Jesus is and what he's done? And so I just want to read this challenge for you guys because I think it hit me like right in the heart, and I was like, I need to be thinking about this week, and This is what it says. Mark 16:8 says, "Trembling and bewildered, the women went out and fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid." This abrupt ending invites us to make our own decision. Will we continue to share Jesus' story with others or not? We know from other accounts of this story that the women later shared the news about what they saw. This reminds us that it is okay to be afraid, and every day is an opportunity to take the next step. This week's challenge is to take that next step, whatever it might look like for you. For some, your next step might be trying out church. For others, it might be starting a relationship with Jesus or getting baptized. It might be changing the way you treat someone at school or the way you think about your possessions. It might be writing a note or a text, telling someone about what you learned, or inviting them to do the next journey study with you. What next step do you sense God might be prompting you to take? And I just think that's such an important question of like, what do you think the next step is out of this? Because we just read an entire book of the Bible and learned so much, but we have to do something with that, and we have to do something with what we've learned and apply it. And I just really want to challenge like everyone who's watching this. What is your next step? Is it getting more involved in church? Is it starting a new Bible study? Is it getting baptized? And if it is, reach out to Matt and I, because we would love to talk to you about that. Is that you treating your friends or your siblings or your parents better? Is it, I don't know, there's so many different options. But if you have questions on what it might look like to have next steps, like Matt and I are here. We would love to help you guys figure that out.
Totes my goats.
Totes my goats. But I think the biggest thing we have to learn from this story is that we are given an incredible gift, and we have to do something with it.
Yeah. I'm sure I'm not like the first one to ever like coin the term, but I always tell my kids like, you know, there's that phrase, knowledge is power.
Oh, yeah.
But I totally disagree with that. I think wisdom is power.
Ooh.
You can read an entire book of the Bible and have that knowledge, but wisdom is using discernment and figuring out what your next step is. Wisdom is the application of knowledge. And so, it's just like, it's so true. If we want to grow in our relationship with God, we should always be looking for that next step.
Mm-hmm.
What is that next step? How is God calling me to grow? And so.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's not easy.
It's not. No, it's hard. Even when you use an excuse like, I just don't have enough time to connect with God, and then you find yourself in a quarantine with nothing but time, and you're still not connecting with God. Like, it's not easy. It's really hard. It takes discipline.
I know. I even find myself in quarantine being like, I don't have enough time to read all these scriptures and stuff, but it's also my job.
Totally.
So, literally, all my time should be devoted to this.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, you really just gotta like buckle down and make sure you make time. Definitely.
We make time for the things that are priorities to us. So.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, that's it. Week 4, deeper dive. All right. Ronnie, you want to say bye?
Yes. Are we doing it how we normally do it, one word at a time?
Yeah, why not?
Thank
you
for
being
here
with
us
this
week
for
journey
through
Mark.
And I just wanted to keep it going. I had nothing else. That's it. All right. Well, we'll see you guys later.
Oh, yeah. And today's Good Friday.
Oh, yeah.
Be thinking about that, but also Happy Easter.
It's true. You should definitely reflect on the fact that it's Good Friday and Easter this week. So
100%.
100. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Bye on 3?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Bye!